Next up, we've got a friend and colleague actually from the West Midlands Combined Authority. I'm going to give you some really practical examples, some real nuggets actually, as I was chatting to him ahead of today, looking at that journey to connect physical activity and sport right into the heart of economic growth. Welcome Simon Hall, who is the Physical Activity Strategic Lead for the West Midlands Combined Authority. Thank you.
There can be nothing worse than somebody saying the next two people are awesome. Just before you start, I'm really passionate about the sport workforce, and the piece of work we did in the Black Country a number of years ago was it became very, very clear that how ill-defined and undervalued our sector is. It's massively undervalued and ill-defined by my parents. The only time my parents got what I did in sport was when I was turned down as apprentice for Port Vale. And by the age I am, you can tell that was about 40 million years ago. And they've struggled to get it. And that struggle goes on to work in a combined authority, which is really begin to champion around how do we do things at scale that can be transformational to make it a better and more economic prosperous place that we live in. And the skills discussion and that perception is very much clear. Not because of naivety of people leading our fantastic skills work, but because what we're saying as a sector, it's not clear. It's really massively ill-defined. We're positioned there alongside culture and the entertainment industry, and we're not the big boys like construction. So there's a lot of work we need to do. Also, I took the opportunity this year, because I'm so passionate about this workforce, to work at university as a guest lecturer on their research module. I don't think actually sport has a problem. I worry about English language and some of the quality of the work that comes forward. And if any sector needs to pull its socks up, I think it is particularly within English. But hey, that's me. This session will talk about the whole system approach and whose system we're trying to change and trying to influence. And really encourage that collaboration. That collaboration is all about added value. What is the added value of working at a high level to crack the big things we need to do to get more people physically active? And by doing that, where are we bringing that added value to make the place where we live better, more healthier, more happier, better connected, and more economically prosperous? And for the last 10 months, I've had the opportunity to work with the West Midlands Combined Authority, with a bunch of massively passionate people to begin to see what difference we can make in the West Midlands. So we're still talking about local authorities having a real key function. Still talking about the world of local enterprise partnerships, county sports partnerships, but there's this new layer around combined authority, where local authorities working with public sector organisations begin to say, what can we do at this level? And can we have a better relationship with government? And by that better relationship, can we start devolving policies, resources into a region? Because that region really knows what needs to be done. And this is our territory. Covers 18 local authorities, 4 local enterprise partnerships, 6 county sports partnerships. And we have to, if we are going to make a big inroad into this gender, we have to work together and work differently, reframe our discussions and our arguments. Core job for the combined authorities across the country, whether it's now Northumberland, Bristol, Derbyshire, Lincolnshire, Cambridgeshire, etc., London, Manchester, is the focus is about transport. But boy, is it difficult to try and get this language about walking and cycling being the same for sustainable transport as it is for physical activity. But we're getting there. Housing, what can we do? We've got all challenges around housing. And I was saying to Yvonne earlier, my biggest challenge in the next month is we've got to come up with the most innovative, collaborative and innovative physical activity housing policy that could be integrated into our ambition to deliver 215,000 new houses across the West Midlands. And how can we draw on worldwide practice to get the most exciting, innovative physical activity developer principles, which will be built into every single contract for our homes. If we're going to get people more physically active, if we're going to improve the state of the place we live, we've got to look at what we're doing around our housing and transport. And a real golden opportunity to look at something different. But if I have another email with another example of another piece of work that somebody's look at, it's going to not only break my back, but it's going to break my heart. And what we need to do is look at how do we work collaboratively to get that stronger argument. And skills. Productivity, employment and skills is a huge, huge issue. But I was highlighting it's a big ask in terms of what we can do to get our voice heard around that agenda. But we're making some inroads. And we're making some inroads because there is a bigger picture for the combined authorities. If we understand our patch and we understand what needs to be done, we can have those conversations with government to devolve funding, and you can see in terms of the size of that funding that comes down to the regions. But we can begin to really crack some of the biggest things that we need to do. So one of the early commissions for the West Midlands Combined Authority was around a mental health commission, now called Thrive, which now has a £50 million devolved budget from government and is seen by governments as one of the 5 leading areas in the world in terms of how we're addressing mental health. And physical activities in every single part of that discussion, whether it is about housing, whether it is about workplace, whether it is in terms of what we're doing with trying to reduce an ambition for a zero suicide rate in the West Midlands. Really getting that added value. And we all know that, you know, you're 30% less likely to be depressed if you're physically active. You're 27% less likely to be off work if you're physically active. We know all the stats. And we need to look at ways, and the work we've done is reframe our discussion around what value physical activity can provide. Now, we'll all be in the same place, whether it's university or public sector or trying to understand the private sector. What the Combined Authority is all about is about this notion of public service reform. We get market forces driving university provision. You get more tighter and tighter budgets through local authorities because of the impact around health and social care. You've got the implications around Brexit, homelessness, etc., etc. And our public service reform piece in our combined authority is looking at how do we offer that better for less for our public services. So how do we provide that added value by doing stuff at scale? How do we provide that added value to do the things that need to be done now to plan for whatever public service looks like in 10 years' time? And the great opportunity for me is that we've got physical activity placed in that public service reform agenda. You get more people physically active, we have the opportunity to reduce the cost of the system. And this is really hard and harsh economics. If you look at a cost of a person who has multiple issues and challenges, the pull they have on the care service, the pull they have on the employment benefit, their pull in terms of their GP. If we were to provide a better service to tackle a vulnerability and the loneliness of people, and we use physical activity as an opportunity, we're not just talking about social prescribing, but we're looking at reducing the costs to the state as a result of people being physically active. And that's the way we're looking to reframe the argument. So can you take somebody who is negative cost to the system and the volume of people that you have across every single area? Can we begin to look at how we're reducing that cost to the system? And the argument says we've got 10 years to do so. There's a brilliant article, if you want to find out more about the whole public service reform agenda, that was in the Observer under the analysis pages a couple of weeks ago. And that quote came straight off it. It's about we've got to do more around sport for the common good, whether it's about the future workforce, whether it's about future provision, whether it's about the ways in which we provide opportunities for our people and our communities. Because the big debate now by government is setting areas to come forward with an inclusive economic growth strategy. We've gone through strategic economic plans, we've gone through regeneration plans. We're now in this period of inclusive economic growth. How do we create good jobs? And Tara will love it if we get it right, because you can have a good job in sport. But you can have a good job in sport as a marketeer, as a social media person, as well as a coach, an instructor, sports development officer. But it's a bloody good job to have. How do you ensure that people have access to goods and services? And how do you get that infrastructure right? And we have that opportunity to begin to influence physical activity across those three pieces. That's our greatest challenge. And that's not just happening in the West Midlands, it's happening in every single place. A golden opportunity for us to come together to work out how we can get that best return from investing into physical activity. And that's the work we did around our West Midlands on the Move strategy, which was launched in November. We looked at that thinking about inclusive economic growth and where could we provide that best return and that added value by getting more people physically active. Where are the things in the system, that whole system approach stuff that we need to crack to get more people physically active? And by physically active, it's a starting point. Let's just get people moving. Let's just get people walking and jogging, not thinking about every week we've got to find that 6 to 8 week cricket coaching session. So our ambition is, how do you make our West Midlands as easier to move around? How do you make it better in our streets and our communities? How can we make it more desirable for our green and open spaces? So we looked at transport, we looked at housing, we looked at skills, those three key areas. We looked at well-being. Yeah, that's the easy thing for us to do. We look at the opportunity around digital. How can we advance the West Midlands digital rollout by looking at physical activity? And we also begin to look at what's our role around community resilience. How do we bring communities better and stronger together? We set a really modest but bloody hard ask as a set of 14 local authorities, 6 CSPs, and about 30 different stakeholders, including university. That our first ambition is to reduce the inactivity gap in the West Midlands. We have, I think everybody claims to it, but I really believe we have. And we're quite proud of it at the moment because it's not going to last for very long. We have the highest levels of physical inactivity in England according to Active Lives. We need to get 93,000 adults, I would love 93,000 adults active just to get to England average on levels of inactivity. £147 million boost that will bring to the economy, £222 million saving to the public health purse if we were able to get there. And that's our contribution. We're talking about what we can contribute to the economy. We've rephrased our physical activity language. So basically what we've done is move further up the system. The whole system approach everybody's saying we need to do. And my role is just to keep the door ajar, have the conversations, enable things to happen, bring the partners with us to make this happen. And those two guys are the biggest advocates. Everybody has, most people that they keep telling me have these great outdoor gym bikes. We changed that to be a human power station. How do you bring movement into everyday life? And that's just outside Coventry station. And these are my two biggest advocates, Martin Reeves, who was on this platform on Tuesday, a health conference, who's Chief Executive of Coventry City Council, a 1:32 half marathon runner, really gets the value of physical activity and what it can do around that system change. And that's our wonderful Mayor, Andy Street. A Mayor who's passionate about inclusivity, and a Mayor who's passionate about sport, and you'll say on every single occasion, this is not a periphery issue. This is not the issue of undervaluing sport and physical activity. This is mainstream. This is what a combined authority is all about in terms of what we need to do to transform a West Midlands into a better place. Just not on story on this is that that's now run by the taxi drivers. Unintended consequences of actions. Sport England talk a lot around their place-based pilots about bridges and roads being put into blocking people's access into parks and open spaces. The unintended consequence of this is that the when Martin and Andy finished cycling, the taxi drivers took it over. The taxi drivers now self-manage. They got a social movement going, so they start getting other taxi drivers take their time to have their 20 minutes to do a bit of physical activity during the day. And we're really tackling a sedentary population. Big lessons for me on this one: governance, 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 briefing sheets, committee papers, briefing sheets, having conversations. That's the world we're now in if we want to be taken seriously alongside other key organisations, other sectors who are trying to look at that piece around the combined authority. As I said, through this, we're rethinking sport and physical activity, but I think the government gave us a great opportunity when we talk about these 5 social outcomes that sport is all about. Sport is there for the social good. It can have an impact on economic development. It can have an impact on physical, mental and individual well-being. I find it odd saying that because I'm not a Conservative supporter, but I really think they've got it right in terms of the message around sports strategy. And we've reframed it to talk about the additional jobs in the sport and physical activity sector. Tara, have a look, 14,000 extra jobs in the sport and physical activity sector. And we trust we'll have your back in there. The impact we'll have on the economy, impact we'll have on productivity, impact we'll have on earnings to make the West Midlands a better place. But as much as we talked about the work that's been done to progress our work with local authorities, CSPs and everybody else, is the issue we have is we've got to come together. And we come together like we've never done before. Universities, private sector, public sector, voluntary sector, to really be really clear what we're trying to achieve in an area. We constantly plate spin. Plates will drop if we start begin to work outside and people begin to look to adopt different leadership tactics, ways in which we're manoeuvring around what we're all trying to do and achieve together. Every day, our mayor gets at least 7 requests from a sport organisation. Can you adopt this? Can you take this on board? Can you do that? There is a better platform that we can work through that together. We've got to keep as many plates spinning in the same direction at the same time, at the same pace in our sport and physical activity sector if we're going to have an opportunity to influence and inform future whole system approaches. And to support that, my dear friend Vanessa Brown, who worked for Sport Ed and Coventry, Solihull and Warwickshire CSPs, unfortunately she died a number of years ago, but one of her biggest legacies is one thing she said at a conference once, is sport's ruined by egos and logos. And it's a time to lay that to rest and begin to move better, productively and collaboratively if we can have that system change. We went for the opportunity to discuss with government about a devolution around physical activity and sport in the West Midlands. Yes, we have the wonderful City of Culture and the Birmingham and West Midlands Commonwealth Games coming. We're on for a hat-trick. Hopefully it'll be Birmingham staying up this season, but we never know. So we wanted to see that opportunity. Some real bold statements by both government. I think for somebody who's working in the sports sector across this government period, it's the first time seen in any public document, because this is accessible to everybody, is a real commitment to getting everybody from every background taking part in sport and physical activity. It's just a disappointment it wasn't there within the manifesto. And we went to the opportunity to see if we could devolve around £1 million from health, some of the Healthy Pupil Capital Fund, into the West Midlands to begin to see if we can do something better and different. We only got warm words from governments, but it gave us an opportunity to think through what could we do collaboratively. How could we go back to government and say, here's the real strong ask that we want for the sport and physical activity sector. Yep. So what I want to just finish up on is we also got to be mindful of the massive changes that are taking place in our system and what's happening around the world. Are we modelling sport and physical activity around where productivity is going? How the world is changing with gig economy, zero-hour contracts, etc. flexible working. Are we really clear how our sport and physical activity piece fits that? That's a bit of slight departure, but some of the thinking we need to look at around productivity, employment and skills. So I'll leave it as in conclusion. We need to be bolder about harnessing the potential of sport and its social value. Things are complex, things are challenging. We need to rise above that challenge and show we can really drive solutions. And we'll only do that through that collaborative leadership. Because if we don't, we'll be played. We know it's time for us to play the system to get more people physically active. Thank you.